this is a Rolls Royce Merlin 500-29, which is a late, it's a post-war engine number, but it started life in June or July 1943. It was manufactured at the Rolls Royce plant in Derby, and was made in a batch of 74 engines, primarily for either Lancaster or possibly Halifax. It saw its wartime life through to 1945, and then at some time at the end of the war it was upgraded to the T24 standard, which is a transport specification, and also upgraded the horsepower to the final horsepower, which is 1,620. It was then installed on an Avro York and had a transport life, transporting RAF personnel until the Avro York became obsolete, and then this was in a batch, we believe, of about 700 Merlins, which Rolls-Royce then upgraded and renumbered to the 500 specification for the Spanish aviation industry, CASA, who were building German aircraft under license, post-war industry for Spain, building the Heinkel 111 bomber, which they called the CASA 2111. And people will know those aircraft because they were in the Battle of Britain as the Heinkel bomber. But they're all powered by Merlin engines. And at some point when CASA went jet, you know, when the Spanish Air Force decided the propellers were old-fashioned and jet aircraft were something they could afford, then these engines were recouped by Rolls-Royce and found their way into private hands, and also used as spare parts for the flying aircraft that we know today, the various Spitfires and others. It spent some time in a test facility in the 1990s, and then I acquired it in 2007, and after 7 years work and designing and having the trailer built and other parts, we now have a static running Merlin, which is as true to a Lancaster installation as I can make it, with the configuration that you would find in a Lancaster. Only that this specific engine, some of the maintenance techniques that we used during its life now mean that it probably could not be used for flight. There are certain elements of the engine which are outside of airworthy specification, and it's not practical to put it back within the spec. So this engine is unlikely to ever fly again. in a way, the engine's been saved rather than it being wasted or just not used. It's been saved from being stripped down to just bare parts that could be used in other engines. That may be its fate in the future, but not if I can help it. I have full intention to keep this until forever, I think.
Good man.
Originally the fuel would be what's called avgas, which is a high-grade petrol, a high-octane petrol of 100 octane. I run this engine at very low power, so I don't need aviation spirit, which provides a delay in the detonation so that you can run the supercharger at higher pressure. That's the prime reason for high octane. So I use pump fuel, 95 RON or 98 RON pump fuel. It's unleaded, and this is an engine that's used to leaded fuel, but at the low hours that I run it and the low power settings, I don't envisage that's going to be a problem. The flat rating of this engine at its maximum specification is 1,620 horsepower at 3,000 RPM. That's engine RPM, not propeller. I run this engine at a very low boost level, so it's probably developing no more than 500 horsepower. And the display RPM is typically up to 2,300 versus the 3,000, which the engine is designed to run at continuously. Well, the Lancaster propeller has a 13 feet diameter. For practical reasons, I can't swing a 13-foot diameter propeller, so I've cropped this. This is a fully functioning hydromatic constant speed propeller. It's cropped to 8 feet diameter, which provides sufficient cooling, thrust for cooling through the radiator, and also provides some load for the engine to work against. You don't want the engine just revving without a load, so this does provide ample load. I can generate boost on here up to, as I say, about 500 horsepower. The trailer is designed for nearly twice that horsepower, so it's well within the specification of the trailer. But for display purposes, it's perfectly adequate. Well, boost is measured at the inlet elbow from the supercharger. So as the engine is running and the supercharger is geared directly to the engine, as the RPM increases, the supercharger is delivering higher pressure to the inlet, so into the cylinders. and that's measured in pounds per square inch. In the US they measure it slightly differently, but it all means the same thing. And boost is a way of measuring supercharger output, and we can graphically represent boost against horsepower, so that at maximum horsepower of 1620, that would transpose to a boost pressure of 18 psi. So that supercharger is giving maximum delivery at that. I'm run this engine at maybe -2 psi or -2.5, so actually the supercharger is impeding, it's providing a negative boost, but as I say, for display purposes that's fine. I can increase this to up to 1000 horsepower, which is the rating for the trailer, and that would relate to something like +5 psi boost pressure, but that's a little bit racy for me. It's windy enough at -2.